Welcome to the Tea Grannies. I'm Elise.
And I'm Mariah. Today we're diving into part 2 of our query letter critiques, so pour yourself a cup of tea and let's get started.
If you missed part 1 of our query critique episodes in October, we do recommend that you head back over there and give that a listen first, and then come back here for part 2, because we are welcoming Carleen right back onto the show for this next bit of query letter critiques, and we have some fun insights for you, and I think a lot of people are going to find this really helpful, so we're excited about it. Part 1 was really great, part 2 is going to be just as great, and the two go together really well, so don't skip it. Hello. Raphael Antonelli is a sin-eater. Raised by a cult, he is a righteous man kept alive by consuming evil when he takes communion. To escape, Raphael tries to kill the priest who raised him and disappear. But trying to kill someone means he's no longer righteous. Now, when he eats sin, he throws up. If Raphael doesn't eat soon, he's going to die. Sebastian Iglesias is a rock and roll prodigy, the result of being possessed, but when he performs, psychosis sets in. When he doesn't, his body decays. While playing a show in Los Angeles, Sebastian's psychosis flares, and this time it's violent. He's not stable enough to ensure he won't hurt anyone, so he stops performing at all. If Sebastian doesn't exercise himself soon, his body will be too decayed for it to matter. The last thing Raphael needs is for an old grudge to resurface. 6 years ago, his ex-boyfriend Sebastian left without bothering to break up with him. He never expected Sebastian to come back, desperate for an exorcism. The priest Raphael tried to kill is the only person left who could help. When he proves to be more interested in exorcising Sebastian than keeping him alive, Raphael must decide how far he'll go for the one person he never managed to get over. Our Father, Who Ain't in Heaven is an adult horror novel complete at 90,000 words. It may appeal to fans of the queer dynamics in Summer Suns, the why choose element of evocation, and the religious perversion in Saint Maud. I am a queer author from Anonymous who currently resides in Anonymous.
This one was really short, 276 words, which again, if you can write a query letter that it is that short and you do your job with it, perfect. I'm going to pause for a second to use this query as a soapbox to push my agenda to put your metadata at the top. Because as an agent who does not rep fantasy but reps horror, this first line, Raphael Antonelli is a sin eater. Very cool, punchy opening. My immediate thought was, I think this is fantasy. And then I went, and I mean, okay, granted, yes, I scrolled down and looked to see. Some agents might not scroll down to see. They might read that and go, this is fantasy, and stop reading it. And it's not fantasy. If the metadata was at the top, they would know right away it's horror, and they would not be scared off by that potential. But it is a cool, punchy opening. I just wanted to use that to push my own agenda for a second. I do think this is an interesting concept. It, like one of the previous ones we read, brought up a lot of questions for me, some of which I think need to be addressed in the query, some of which don't. This first body paragraph, I will be honest, I had to reread it a couple of times. I think it just needs like a general copy edit, maybe a little bit of a restructuring. But once I did read it a couple of times and I kind of understood better what was actually being expressed here, I was like, okay, this is interesting. Most of my questions came in this like last body paragraph, which is the last thing Raphael needs is for an old grudge to resurface, et cetera, et cetera. The first thing is it talks about his ex-boyfriend, Sebastian. In the earlier paragraphs, I had understood that Raphael is essentially trapped by this priest. Like the concept is that he is trying to escape. How does he have an ex-boyfriend? This made me very curious about what his actual living situation or like trapped, quote unquote, situation is. Is he not actually physically trapped? In which case we need to make that much more clear because that's what I understood. And then I was very confused by like how he had a relationship at one point. Or was the relationship before that? Maybe. I don't know. These are questions that need to be answered in the query. My other question is in closer to the end of this paragraph, it says he proves to be more interested in exercising Sebastian than keeping him alive. Keeping who alive? Keeping Sebastian alive or keeping Raphael alive? I was a little bit confused about that because this priest is also in control of Raphael's life or freedom. So I wasn't sure which him that was referencing. I'm assuming it's Sebastian, but it might not be. So just make that a little bit more clear. I had an interesting question, and this is what I would call a good question because it made me go to Google and start like researching in a way where like it's not because I was confused, but because I was like kind of excited. Is I'm very curious about the naming conventions of the characters because these are both very religious names. Raphael was an archangel who was a healer. Sebastian was the patron saint of giving people a saintly death. If these things are somehow connected intricately into the story, I would be so excited by that concept. If they are not, then I've probably just caused myself just too much excitement for no reason. But you might want to consider renaming them if that's not part of the story. Or if it is, maybe you can work it in. Might be a fun idea. My last question is the title of the book. It's a good title. I'm worried it does not fit the voice of the book.
Oh.
Based on what we have read, this seems pretty dark. And the title is Our Father Who Ain't in Heaven, which sounds very like it made me laugh the first time I read it. I was like, I giggled and I was
sounds
like
a comedy.
Yeah, I was like, that's a fun title, but it sounds like it's like comedy or like it has a very like, I don't know, like casual vibe. And this book does not sound like a casual vibey book.
Yeah.
So my question is, if that doesn't fit the voice of the book, I might reconsider naming it that.
Mm-hmm.
And then aside from that, like this bio was good. It was nice and simple and short. I always like to know if an author, especially an author who's writing a queer book, also identifies as queer. Sometimes we get queer stories that come in and the author does not identify that in themselves. And I know, like, I'm not saying we want to out people, but it's very hard for me to want to sign an author if I'm thinking they might be a straight person writing a queer story. So one way I've heard of people getting around that is just saying something like, I am writing this from my own personal experience, something like that. People used to use like hashtag own voices. That isn't as common anymore, but if you did use that, like, we would know what you mean. So I do appreciate it when somebody identifies sort of how they connect to the story, as we've talked about previously.
Nice. Yeah. This query really stood out to me in the last paragraph of the book portion, which, like, that's where all of Carleen's questions started to come to light, and I think those are all very valid, so I appreciated hearing that perspective because I didn't think about a bunch of those things. But what I appreciated about it is that there's so many layers to the conflicts that the author has set up. So there's a main character trying to murder the guy that he needs to save the life of the person who broke his heart, allegedly, which is like, wow, conflict, drama. There's so much chaos there, and I love it. Like, that's delightful. And then the two main things that tripped me up with this query were, and Carleen's already mentioned this, saving the title and the genre till the end. I think that was my main block with this, was like, we went into it blind. Really good hook with that Sin Eater line. But the entire time I was reading it, I was like, what genre is this? What is this story? Like, what am I getting into? And I was just really distracted by that. And then this is something that open to debate on, and any of my comments always open to debate on, but this one in particular, I'd be curious to hear some rebuttals on it. I am not convinced that we need the paragraph about Sebastian's part in the story. Like, my recommendation was just to cut that entire paragraph, just do the paragraph about Raphael. And then in the last paragraph about the book, we get introduced to Sebastian more generically. We're just like, okay, there's this ex-boyfriend, needs an exorcism, and the priest seems to be, you know, not super concerned with keeping him alive. Maybe, if that's what we can actually infer from what's written. And that, to me, was enough. Yeah, is it a dual POV? Is that specified?
Well,
That's
that
what I
was
was
going to be my question, was
going
if it's
to
a dual
say.
POV, we can meet Sebastian, but if it's not a dual POV and you don't state that it's a dual POV, then that just feels like wasted space. It just
If
right?
it is, so assume for a moment that it is a dual POV. Does my point still stand, or do you think the Sebastian paragraph needs to be there? Because we are still introduced to him in the last paragraph.
Yeah, I think if it is a dual POV and he is going to be in it, then I would probably want to just add like a single sentence about Sebastian in that last paragraph about the book, like between Sebastian left without bothering to break up with him and he never expected Sebastian to come back. There could be a sentence there saying like the stuff about him being possessed and stuff like that, and condense it to like a sentence, because I don't think that is the driving. I don't think we need that much information about Sebastian yet. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
It seems like Raphael is like the main character. But the one thing I'm laughing because I'm like so proud of myself that I noticed something that no one else did. This never happened. I gotta know, where is the why choose element in this? It's listed in the query. The why choose element of, oh my gosh, I'm gonna say this word wrong. Evocation.
Oh.
So okay, well, where's the why choose? Like, is the priest involved somehow? Which would be, I think, perhaps gross because the priest raised him. The priest also isn't named, so is he that important of a character? Is he just sort of the villain in the dark?
Can we can you define why choose for me?
Okay, so
I think I know what it is,
choose
but
thing is like a romance term, and it's like, if there's a love triangle and there's two guys and one girl, like, why choose? Why not have both of them?
Okay.
Or three of them,
That's
or whatever.
Yeah.
I think
the whole
the
hockey
why
team.
choose element is between having Sebastian as a love interest who has been exorcised from his demons versus not. Like, do we need to choose between having him exorcised in order to then have him as a love interest, or can we just have him as a love interest as he is, maybe?
I think even if that is what they mean, then they're using the terminology incorrectly.
Perhaps,
and I think I love that they pulled out the reasons for the comp. So if you're going to pull out that reason of why choose, then you have to deliver and tell us where that's going to be in this story. Is there another love interest? And if you're not sure about the terminology, leave it out.
Yeah.
Just to be safe. But that was something I bumped on, ironically, not till my second read through. So
I think the reason I didn't flag it was like I just skated over it because I was like, I don't know what that is. Moving on. Like I just didn't
so I do that too with a lot of stuff. But then my little romance brain was like, hey, what's that doing here?
Yeah. That in itself is an issue. If you have things in your query that people are going to just ignore because they don't know what it means, maybe you should not have that.
Yeah.
Yes, I actually think I touched on this on one of the other queries later about using like slang terminology in your query. Is like, not everyone you query is the same age as you and as online as you. So like if you use like slang and the person you're querying is like 20 years older than you, they're going to be like, what?
Yeah, fair point.
So that's something else to watch for. And that's why, again, business letter.
Yeah.
I think that's what I'm driving home for me, but that was something for this too. And the other thing I kind of bumped on, raised by a cult. I mean, we don't have to get more details about the cult, but I would be curious about at least one detail about the cult. Like you could flip it in right there, raised by a blank cult, and then we can get an idea of what kind of cult he was raised in.
That's a really good callback to part 1 of our query letter critique episode. We critiqued one, what was the line? Matriarchal Druid Society or something like that. Like clearly, Carleen identified it, so clearly tells us where they were raised or where, like, what environment they are coming from. And I think what you're saying about this cult, like cult immediately, this is another thing I'm a sucker for. I will always want to know more about a cult story because I find it fascinating in a very morbid way. But adding like an adjective in there of like, what kind of cult? Is there something really poignant and specific, one word, wouldn't add more than one, that they can add. I think that's a really good point.
Yeah, I think it would really like sell it to me. And the other note that I had was, again, author bio. Once you move the metadata to the beginning, then it leaves the author bio as a single sentence. And so that needs to be beefed up 1 or 2 more sentences. What do you write? How long you've been writing? Are you in a group? What do you do for hobbies? What do you do for your day job? Like just something else about you in the bio to fix that. But yeah, definitely I can see on this one, like where the data was in the first place versus where it is now. And it does honestly just look more pleasing to the eye to have it at the beginning as well. Yeah, it works.
And I think that's also a good reminder of what Carleen said about the last query we did in part 1 of this this episode was, if you feel like you don't have enough for your bio portion in the query letter, that's a really good spot to show that you've done your research on the agent and just connect with them on something more like a little bit more personal, something you feel that is maybe relevant. If they don't feel like, I've come across this when querying, that trying to come up with that personal element just feels contrived and like it's just not there, just doesn't exist. Carleen, I wondered if you had any suggestions for like what else? Is there anything else to focus on there?
I have had some that come in that are as simple as I enjoy following you on Twitter and seeing your posts. Like, and that could be a lie, and I don't know. But something as simple as that, at least I'm like, okay, cool. Like, and I mean, maybe I guess the only research you'd do that is make sure they actually have a Twitter account. But
yeah, make sure you check before you say.
Like, it doesn't need to be super personalized to make it feel personal.
Okay. That's a really good reminder. I think that's
and even just like, or look on the agency website and say like, you know, I checked out your agency website and I think, you know, it would be a good fit because your agency focuses on XYZ thing.
Oh, focus on the agency as opposed to
the agency is an option as well. And I mean, I'm assuming most of the time you're going to the agency website before you query.
If you're not, you should be.
You could say like, I like the colors on your website, honestly. Like anything, any little morsel of something is going to stand out more than the thing.
Yeah. Okay. And if you're having trouble writing the bio, like I know that it's always awkward for a lot of people to talk about themselves, especially in a letter like this where you're like, it feels like so fake and stupid. So what I do is I write the bio like I was writing it for someone else, like Elise.
Yeah.
Like how would I write like a short, if someone asked me what Elise was up to, what she liked to do with her writing, and that I could definitely hammer out, you know, 3 sentences about her that sound pretty cool. And so if you can do that, and then I've had my friends read mine over and be like, does that sound like me? Or do I sound like I'm full of shit? And they're like, don't worry, it sounds like you. And I'm like, sold.
I have 2 more thoughts on this.
Yeah.
One is, it can be the most simple thing about you. Like I get so many in that are just like, I live in X place with my 4 dogs and my 2 cats. And then immediately I'm like, okay, an animal person. I vibe with that person.
Yeah, relatable.
The other thing is if you're feeling like, I don't know, like nervous about like writing your bio because it feels contrived, lean into it. Make it so voicey that like it's kind of ridiculous. We have gotten some really funny ones in and like that are like just so ridiculous, but they're funny and they stand out.
Oh, that's a good idea. Now I'm like, I want to rewrite mine and make it sound silly and sassy now.
Totally. I've had people literally write like little like jokes in with their bio and I love it.
I love that. I'm all, give me the jokes. That's my shit.
Don't feel pressured that you have to. But on a mental health level, if you're feeling nervous about it, you probably just need to lean into it and embrace it.
I like that advice. Yeah. I like it.
Sold. Dear Agent, I am seeking representation for my middle grade novel, The Drop. I found your agent profile and submission guidelines for Anonymous online and have included a synopsis in addition to the first chapter of my book. I think this story might appeal to you because it features a real kid who is dealing with real emotions as he navigates some real-world issues. This story is similar to Christina Soontornvat's book, Best Wishes, because it features an idea that stands on its own without being too similar to any other written piece. This story is like Mary Poppins meets Alice in Wonderland in its physical transportation and imaginative travels, only this story explores the landscape of being inside a picture book and the lessons that can be learned from the characters inside. The Drop is a 4,200-word story that features a young boy who is disappointed by cancelled plans and learns the importance of boredom when he is whisked away into a book. This story follows the life of young Jack, who is disappointed one morning at finding that his great plans for the day are cancelled. His father encourages him to fill his time with something creative. With a stack of books in hand and alone in his room, Jack fully realizes his disappointment and sheds a few tears in the process. As he wipes away his tears from the cover of one of the books, he is swept away into the storybook, where he meets Rosie the Golden Greeter, her owners, and some of her fellow animal friends. Jack is welcomed by all as he follows along with Rosie and her story, as she has an identity crisis over being too friendly and not enough of a guard dog. In the end, Jack understands the importance of being bored and learning new things. I'm in my final year of an English Bachelor of Arts degree with a concentration in creative writing. I have had one of my poems published in the 15th issue of my university's literary magazine. I enjoy writing in many genres, fiction, poetry, and children's literature, to name a few, and I am a very motivated individual and a hard worker who wants to take their work from good to great. Thank you for taking the time to consider my piece. I look forward to hearing from you.
Okay, this one is a bit longer than I think all of the other ones we've done so far. It's 417 words.
Oh, yeah.
And I definitely have some concerns that are maybe not even necessarily about the query letter itself, but just about the way it's being pitched that I'm confused about. But I will start from the top. The opening, the author, explains why it might appeal to the agent. And I will say, this is always nice to see. I really appreciate it. It's totally not necessary. And when you already are a bit long on your word count, I would probably cut it out or at least cut it down. My other question on this is pitched as a middle grade novel. The title doesn't really feel like a middle grade novel. I don't know if this is like a working title. If I were to just hear the title, The Drop, I would think, I don't know, literary fiction or something. My other probably biggest concern is the length of this book. It is 4,200 words. That's not a novel. That's not a middle grade novel.
I think that's a typo.
Do you think it's a typo? Okay,
yeah.
That is very helpful.
I'm quite confident that it's a typo.
Okay,
yeah.
Because one of my big concerns was like, if this author's intending to pitch this to like a literary festival or something, then this is not the right format and they need to refigure it completely. If that is a typo and it's maybe like 42,000 words, then we can ignore that.
Yeah.
And that makes me happier. So going into like the concept of the story, I have a bit of a red flag, maybe it's a yellow flag. But basically the first thing we learn about this story is that it features a young boy who learns the importance of boredom. That's a totally understandable thing, but I'm concerned that pitching your book as a book about boredom, people are going to think it's boring right off the top. And I understand that your book is not boring just because it is about that concept, but I think we can phrase that differently where an agent is going to see, oh, this book is about a kid who's bored, and they're going to go, that sounds boring to read. So I would rephrase that. I liked the kind of how our dive into like learning what this book is actually about. Mm-hmm. And I like the like story within a story concept. I think that can be really fun, especially in middle grade. However, I'm not understanding from this how the story within the story connects to the outer story.
Sure.
And I would like that. I'm sure it does, but I would like it just to be far more clear how those things jigsaw puzzle together.
Yeah. Is the concern there that it would be kind of like they go into the storybook in the story world and then they do a bunch of stuff there, and then when they go back to their real life, it doesn't have any impact at all and it's too disconnected?
Yeah, it's like two separate stories.
It's basically the premise of it was all a dream all along.
Yeah, kind of, exactly. Yeah, and I love to give authors the benefit of the doubt. I'm sure it has importance that is reflected in the actual manuscript. I'm not seeing that here
in the query. Yeah, no, that's a great point. That's for my part, I love the concept of this. Like, it sounds like such a fun middle grade concept. And any story that whisks me into another world, whether that's a picture book or a portal of some kind, I'm sold. Like, I love portal stories of all kinds, so I'm a sucker for those. My overall impression of the query is, I think all the pieces are there, but because of how long it is, they get lost and muddied, and tightening and trimming will be the most valuable way to approach this. So most of my suggestions, which the author will see when we send them the feedback, is to the order of information, consolidating that information, removing unnecessary repetition, and then overall I just think it can be a lot shorter, and the comp titles can be presented a bit more clearly so that it's easier to follow. So I'll actually just read one of my comments where I recommend rewriting the hook portion, how I think it would be more effective. Basically, it would be, "Dear Agent, I am seeking representation for my 42,000 word middle grade novel. Mary Poppins meets Alice in Wonderland with its imaginative travels, featuring a young boy disappointed by canceled plans who learns the value of boredom when he's whisked away into a picture book." That's I think it was 2 sentences to do what this author has done in like a pretty massive paragraph.
Yeah.
Not saying that that's perfect. Like Carleen pointed out, the boredom wording may need to be revised and adjusted. I didn't do that in my little suggestion rewrite. But that's an example of how you could tighten this up quite considerably to save yourself a lot of space and a lot of time and still say the same thing. Which is the hardest part of the query and the most valuable part of the query.
Yep.
The part that I hate doing the most, so I understand that, like, I'm learning as we're critiquing these, because I'm seeing, like, yep, that's something I struggle with too. And then I think the one other thing I suggested was in the book section, comes down to character motivation, and maybe empathy for the main character. I thought maybe we could benefit knowing what those plans were that got canceled a little bit more specifically. Mm-hmm. Like, what's Jack so disappointed about? Was he going to go to the zoo? Was, like, what does that tell us about his character? Is there anything? It would need to be brief, like one thing. Don't make a list, because that'll get too complicated. But yeah, I think that builds an empathy piece that might be missing. And then, yeah, other than that, I really like the concept. And then the mishmash of Mary Poppins and Alice in Wonderland sounds super fun. Like, that makes me think, like, colorful, adventurous, kind of weird and quirky. And I think that's a really cool kind of starting point. So kudos on that.
Yeah, one of the things, one of the questions I had was, how old is Jack? Because we get young boy, we don't get an age. And so depending on what the plans are and what age he's at, like, a bit of a different reaction and a bit of a different adventure, I guess. Like, is he 8 or is he 12? Mm-hmm. Like, there's a big difference between those two ages. So I think getting the age would be important. I know it's middle grade, but then, we've got to know that. And I like that. And then for the, I know there's a section here, insert specific great plans here. So that would also depend on his age. Like, 8-year-olds want to go to, like, drag races or something and, like, watch fast cars, or they want to go to the zoo, and, like, 12-year-olds are like, I want to go paintballing. Like, what is it that he was doing that is so disappointing? So that also will go with the age. So yeah, that was something that really was kind of sticking out to me as we were talking about it here. I do love animal characters. I'm pretty sold on those. I love those. And I like that the dog is having an identity crisis about being too friendly.
Yeah.
Oh
so
my God,
cute.
dog. Oh, that's just like Maggie. She's like, I want to love everybody, but I should also bark, right?
The name, Rosie the Golden Greeter. Like,
that's
a
so
golden
cute.
Retriever, right? It better be.
It must be.
Yeah, it absolutely has to be. So cute. So I love that. I liked the comp titles too. I do agree that the title does not really suit the story. So I would encourage the writer to maybe change the title. And what else did I have to say? Oh yeah, another one where I'm going to make the same comment I made last episode. Don't sell yourself short in your bio ever.
Yeah.
You can say, I am a very motivated individual and a hard worker who wants to take their work from good to great. So you're telling me your work is only good and you're pitching it anyway? Don't say that. Don't be modest. Not the time for modesty. Again, business letter. All put your best foot forward. You don't want to be like, I'm good at this, but I'm kind of good at this. Like,
sure.
No, leave that out. They'll find that out later. Don't worry about it. And you want to let your work speak for itself too. So if you don't sound confident about this, then it's going to be an uphill battle working on this book with you as well.
Yeah.
So that's something, I mean, maybe I read too far into that, but that is just something that stuck out to me. So I did like the rest of the bio though. Very cool. And that's all good as well. But yeah, that's something that stuck out to me as well.
No, I think I really appreciate when you bring that up, because I think you're good at identifying that in a way that I just kind of skate over, because I would describe myself that way too. I would be like, I might be kind of maybe good at some things and you could consider it maybe if you want, like maybe.
And that's why I stop you and I'm like, shh, you are good at it.
You are
Stop
brilliant.
talking.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah.
Right. Like Carleen was saying, lean into it. Like you wrote a book and you're querying it to an agent. It's obviously you're good at something.
Yes, ma'am.
Even if it was just finishing the damn thing.
You have made it this far. Exactly.
You made it this far. Don't put your foot in your mouth now.
Yeah.
I like it. Dear agent, trigger warning. You'll never graduate high school. You'll never be a functioning adult. These statements were casually repeated to me by various teachers throughout my childhood. When my best friend since 3rd grade unexpectedly committed suicide in a violent and public execution, I began to wonder if that would truly be the case. In my 50,000-word YA memoir, Nothing Gold, I share the raw and vulnerable experience of trying to survive high school as a twice exceptional, gifted with neurodivergent disability, girl, while navigating the trauma of school shootings, suicide, the hypocrisy and injustice of society, and complicated family dynamics. As a high schooler, I was a whirlwind of sassy, quirky, and silly, but I fumbled through social interactions. My heightened sense of justice and emotional instability made relationships, especially with adults, strained. I found ease and comfort with animals and a couple of close friends, while my mouth too often found trouble. I take my readers on a roller coaster of emotions as we relive the hilarious pranks my family instigated, the rage of oppression, and the profound swallowing grief of loss. Nothing Gold is a character-driven plot centered on learning to live around grief and overcoming deep seeds of rage so as to make it across the stage and to shift the tassel from right to left. This memoir would shelve with blank and would complement blank in your repertoire. It has a unique plot structure that flows between the present tense of a 17-year-old me and past tense of memories from childhood in first-person narration. It tackles tough 90s family dynamics of boomers raising millennials, and takes a magnifying glass to social issues often swept aside like the treatment of vulnerable peoples by the press and social gaslighting. My social awareness, juxtaposed with my lack of social skills, builds compelling conflict beyond the stereotypical life isn't fair cliché. I have been previously published in a collection of work themed on self-love, Unseal Your Self-Love, compiled by Lauren Brill. I have also had work featured on the Tea Grannies podcast. I'm a feral woman, a forest gremlin, enchanted by Mother Nature and her magic in the mundane. I hope that my writing gives voice to those who haven't found theirs, affirms those who have, and inspires social change. I would be honored if you accept this request to be my agent. We have common ground in a love for genuine and messy characters and unconventional plots. I have included the complete manuscript to follow your directions for submission of nonfiction work. I look forward to being added to the list of esteemed authors you represent. Thank you for your time and for considering my project.
This query was 457 words, and that's not including the question that the author typed at the end for us. I initially included that, and I was like, wow, that's long. And then I realized my mistake. So 457, little bit long, not to the point where I would notice it while reading necessarily. But definitely room to shorten a little bit, I think. Right off the bat, we have to take a slight sidebar conversation because this starts with a trigger warning. and we have some things to talk about. So the one thing that I noticed with this trigger warning is it states trigger warning, but it does not tell us what the triggers are.
Yeah.
And so I don't know what I'm looking for, and I don't know what to expect. And that almost makes, and I don't even really have triggers that bother me, but that gives me anxiety because I'm like, oh no, what's coming?
Yeah, that's fair. I kind of got stuck on the trigger warning thing first off. There's other things that I want to talk about at this piece, but because the trigger warnings is like just the first sentence, that's why we're touching on it now. So I promise we'll get past this and we'll have other things to say. This is not the bulk of the conversation. But yeah, I had the same kind of reaction. There's this header, it says trigger warnings, it's in bold, and then we start with these quotes and what this author went through, which is just, a really awful experience. And then there's this line about suicide. And the issue that I take here is that this is meant, I think that line about like that whole paragraph is meant to be the trigger warning.
Oh.
And that line goes into detail about suicide, and that's the part that's triggering. So the trigger warning itself is actively triggering to the reader if that's something they're sensitive about reading about. So in my notes, I just said next to the words trigger warnings, put a colon, add just tags. Like it's a one-word thing. It shouldn't be more than that because you don't want to unnecessarily trigger the person that you're trying to warn in the first place. So all you do is trigger warning, suicide, school shooting. If there's others that you're thinking of, maybe add those. But that's all you need, really. And then you can just launch right into it. And we talked about trigger warnings in part 1 with a different query that had the trigger warnings listed at the very end. And I think Carleen touched on this back then already, but we'll bring it up again now, that like those worked at the end of that query because the query doesn't actually bring up those specific things in detail that you need a warning for them. It's more like the book will contain these things. If you're sensitive to them, you may not want to read it. That's what they're for. Whereas this query goes into detail and mentions some specifics about suicide and different things. So the warnings coming up front are more important. That's the main issue I took with it, was that like someone who's sensitive to reading about suicide would probably be a little bit triggered by this query, and they'd need the warning more upfront.
Sorry, I wanted to jump in and say while I was thinking about it. For this author and authors that have trigger warnings for things like suicide, is make sure you really do your research on the agent you're querying, because a lot of agents will say right in their bio that they will not accept or read any manuscripts with those. And they'll list. And that is something, be respectful of that. And also try to find out before you query them, because yes, there's a trigger warning, but if they flat out said they don't accept that, then you didn't do your research on the author, on the agent. So you want to make sure that you're prepared in that way and you're not querying agents who don't want to see this kind of stuff. So feels like common sense, but also when people are querying and you're adding so many agents to your list and you're all like excited, sometimes you might miss that.
And sometimes when you're burnt out, sometimes you might just let it slip. But
your brain will just skim right over it.
Yeah, don't let this one slip. And I wanted to say specifically for this specific one, and like I have said, I am not somebody who typically needs trigger warnings, but the way this is written, I actually I underlined it because I was like, that is shocking even to me.
Yeah.
And so if I was somebody who was sensitive to that and I read that without a proper trigger warning, I would absolutely be triggered.
Yeah. Actually, now that you're saying that and we're looking at the first paragraph kind of together, it's one of those things where it would also be nice to have word count, title, everything in the beginning there, instead of having such a hardcore entrance, because then it jumps right into the details of it. And there's quite a lot of discussion about the trauma of school shootings and suicide and stuff like that. So I think you kind of hit that. And I know that there's a bit of a shock value factor with that opener, but again, business letter shock value is not going to get you super far. Although it is shocking.
Yeah.
So it did do what it was intended to do. But again, business letter, you're trying to get someone to rep your book. So I would still start with the business end of things and then diving into the details. Because even with the trigger warnings, that's a bit tough to jump into right off the bat.
Sure.
Yeah, I made a note about that as well, that like I would argue to put the metadata at the top, not only just because of how triggering this first paragraph is, but because jumping immediately into dialogue feels so ungrounded. I have not a clue what I'm reading, and I just have dialogue, and I'm like, what is this? Like, no clue. And if I knew it was a memoir, then like I think it would, reading that it was a memoir, reading that metadata, and then going into this very, very punchy, like horrible opening, I would feel an additional emotional piece knowing that this is a memoir.
Yeah.
Whereas right now I go into this and I feel chaotic and ungrounded and like concerned.
Yeah.
So then continuing on, my biggest sort of overall statement for this is that this query feels like a stream of consciousness writing. It doesn't really feel structured in a way that I think it should be. And I think there's a lot of additional information that we can just take out and really just give us like, what is the main through line? What is the main heart behind this memoir? I do really like that at the bottom of the first page, in like the second body paragraph, the author lets us know how the book is structured, how it flows between the present tense of 17-year-old author and past tense of memories from the childhood in first person. I really like that. I really like knowing what I'm getting into when I'm going to read something. And for me, the more details, the better, especially if there is a change up in the tense or in the POV or something. And I like to know that ahead of time. So I really appreciated that. The rest of it, kind of, as I said, it feels kind of too stream of consciousness. I will go back to Maria's note, business letter, make it a business letter, not a stream of consciousness like journal writing. I like the author's sort of credentials. I think I laughed at the I'm a feral woman, a forest gremlin, because I was like, oh, me too. And so I really liked that. In the very last paragraph, I don't love the I would be honored if you would request this request to be my agent. I think it feels really pushy, to be honest. And I know it's probably not meant that way. It's meant to be polite. And I just like, I know why you're querying me. We know the specifics. You don't need to say it like that. And it just feels like you're trying to be a little bit pushy. You're probably not. That's just how it comes across. I do like how you personalize this with the like common love for certain types of stories. I have a really big question that I think might help the author with their question about like how to pitch this, is kind of what their question was. They don't really have a feeling of how they understanding the parameters of like working with a story like this. Most of the time, when a memoir goes on submission, it goes out on proposal. So what you should have instead of you can have a full manuscript ready. That is fine. You need to have a proposal ready. And you need to have that proposal ready for agents to consider it. And that will help you not only understand how this whole thing works, which I think is what you're confused about, it will also help you reframe your query into a business letter type query letter. So I'm going to give you like a very quick overview of how I structure proposals. Essentially, all they are is a quick overview of your book. That can be like 1 to 2-ish pages. It's short, it's quick. It basically explains what the book is about. It can include like why you're writing it, some important plot points, your connection to the story, things like that. It includes an author bio, which is usually about 1 page. It includes marketing research. Have fun with that. I'm sorry. That can include things like if you have a big social media following, including things like maybe podcasts or something that have a similar theme and their numbers and how other types of books have done or how this genre has done on the market. Basically show that you know how the market is going to react to your book. You need to have a thorough understanding of your book for this. You need a section on comp titles. I usually recommend at least 3 and not more than like 6. You're going to want to put, including that, you're going to want to put the title of the book, the author's name. I usually include number of like Goodreads reviews and their average, I think it's out of 5.
Yeah.
As well as if it's on any Amazon like top lists, like if it's number 100 in a certain category, include all of that and include a little snippet of each of your comps. Then you're going to do an annotated table of contents for your entire book. That is every chapter written in like a quick little snippet of what it's about and how it connects to the next chapter. And then you're going to provide a sample chapter. And that is going to be your proposal. And it is a lot of work, but that is what's going to go on submission when you have an agent.
God.
I think my favorite thing was Elisa's face while you were doing this list. She was getting more and more
stressed out.
Oh my
gosh. It sounds like some of the school assignments I'm doing right now, and I'm just feeling very, very glad that I'm into fantasy and not writing memoir.
Not nonfiction.
Oh my God.
However, you can see how once you've done all this work and you have this proposal, it's going to be a piece of cake to write a query letter.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, there's so
much. It's like having a reverse outline of your fiction book, and then you can.
Yeah, exactly. So that's my biggest recommendation. Create a proposal.
Okay, I love it.
Is the you mentioned in the proposal the first thing is like a description of the book and what it's about. Is that different from what we're seeing in like query letter book descriptions? Does it go all the way to the end, or
it's more thorough. It's not like a full synopsis. It's more like I would call it like an elongated pitch.
Okay, that makes sense.
And you can include a little bit of like author stuff in it as well, especially for a memoir.
For a memoir, yeah. Wow.
That sounds like a lot.
Wow.
It's a lot, but that's how nonfiction goes on to sub.
Okay.
So with memoir is a bit of a gray area. Like I'm sure there are agents who put memoir on sub just by sending the manuscript. I'm assuming. I have sold a memoir and a memoir adjacent book, and they both went out on proposal. The nice thing about that is that you are now not editing a complete manuscript with an agent and then also with an editor. You are doing your complete manuscript once you have an editor, and they can guide you. Most people have most of their manuscript written, but we don't have to do like lengthy edits at the agent stage, which is nice.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
Wow.
That's a lot.
That's a lot. I'd like to circle back. So like this is such a wealth of information. Like that's so good to know. I didn't know any of this. I have edited a bunch of self-published memoirs for clients, and that's a very different process. They can just publish it whenever they want, right?
Exactly.
But the benefit of that is like it sounds like people who come with a proposal for their memoir know what they're talking about.
Yes.
Way better than the average writer with their book. Like you have to just look into it more and know that there's a market for this and that people are interested in these conversations, and that they were like with the podcast thing you mentioned, like that people are already consuming content like this or on similar topics. That just shows there's a market. People will want to buy this book, which is, fascinating. But I did want to circle back because this has been a lot about like, hey, here's a bunch of work that you should probably do. And I do want to be careful to highlight for this author the things that are working well. We've talked about some of the things that we recommend revising that will help with the proposal piece. But yeah, just want to circle back to some of those things that I really appreciated about this, because there's some really good stuff in here. The first note is like the raw touching nature of this query shouldn't be understated. There's so much to consider here, and the emotion comes through really clearly. The impact that these stories had on the author comes through really clearly, and just the importance of the topics that the author, I think, is tackling. Like, these are things that should be talked about. I think these are things that will interest people, and that comes through in every paragraph, in my opinion. The other thing is a bit of a question for the author, so if they want to follow up, I would love to hear if the title of this memoir, Nothing Gold, is at all related to The Outsiders.
I assumed
I want it to be, because
But
so the Outsiders, for those who don't know, in that book, some of the characters quote a poem by Robert Frost called "Nothing Gold Can Stay," and one of the last lines of the book is "Stay Gold, Pony Boy," which is like one of the most famous lines of the story. I'm a nerd. This is my favorite book from middle school, so I really want to know if there's a connection there. If there's not, either make one or take it out, because other people are going to have that brain connection and be like, wait a second, where's the... So my first thing is like, okay, you wanted a comp title? I think The Outsiders would be great, because even though The Outsiders, I believe, is fiction, it is a commentary on the social division in a specific age group at a specific time of just like social issues going on in that date and time that were very relevant to the people that this author was writing about. And it might have been somewhat memoir-ish, but it was presented as fiction. I can't say with any certainty if it was at all based on the author's real life, but it just reads that way. Like, it feels very personal and very true. And I think that fits this memoir really, really, really well. So even if the topics covered in the memoir are quite different from The Outsiders, the goal of the book and the weight of what they're talking about and how it impacts the characters and the age group that they're working with, it's just a perfect comp, honestly. It's like, and it's a classic, so everyone's gonna know it, which, I don't know, Carleen can say, that can be a detriment.
It's a gray area. I think I wouldn't use it as your only comp.
Yeah.
But I think if you mentioned, you know, my book reminds me of The Outsiders for XYZ reason, I think that would touch a lot of people in a good way, where they're like, oh yeah, I get it.
Yeah, and then
I like
just
how
add
I
a few
didn't catch
commas.
that.
I told you it was one of my favorite books in middle school, so that's the only reason.
That I know. I was like, oh, I was just so excited about catching something no one else caught, and then I was like, wow, I missed this one. Ooh, right over my head. Okay, so yeah, this sounds like a book that needs to be written, needs to be read, if that makes sense. There's so much trauma around this for a lot of, well, adults now and a lot of kids now, teenagers and stuff like that. I think that it would be a great book to be out in the world. I agree with everything you guys said, etc. I also do love the I'm a feral woman, a forest gremlin. Also made me laugh. I was like, oh, me too.
Right.
I usually just go with gremlin, but yeah, it's good. And I did really like that part about the writer. I would recommend, I'm not sure the writer can use this as a comp, but I would recommend that the writer read My Dark Vanessa, which is like a sort of true-ish, not really true story. And it's really quite dark and it has a lot of trigger warnings and stuff like that. And it's not a memoir, but it's, you know, it's written in dual timeline. Like, there's a timeline where the character is 15 and there's a timeline of the character in her 30s. And the difference in her, how she interprets things and everything like that is really well done. And if this was written similarly,
I don't know if you saw Carleen's reaction to the title of that book, but I saw it and I want to know what that's about.
Yeah, I want to know too.
It's a very controversial book because it's so dark. It's like
it is so dark.
Darkest books ever written, I swear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're not going to talk about it, but if you don't know what that book's about, just go Google it and you'll understand.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like, and that's why I said there's tons of trigger warnings for that one. So like, you know, before you jump in. But I think it would be a good research book for a heavy topic like this. So the writer can get an idea of what that looks like on the page and how it can come across. So yeah, that was just one of my main suggestions. I think for the most part, I obviously agree with you guys. I had no idea there was so much that went into querying nonfiction. So
I
won't ever be doing that.
But it's a different kind of work. For sure.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. But yeah, that was it. I had no real comments on this one because you guys kind of played. I was just like, yeah, that sounds good. Wow, the advantage to going last. Like, I don't have to do very much. Well, I love it.
Dear Carleen, What happens when first love collides with buried secrets? Before We Part is a 62,000-word young adult romance that transforms into a gripping mystery, certain to resonate with your love for both genres. It weaves essential YA tropes, enemies to lovers, love triangles, and coming-of-age experiences, into a narrative that explores dark realities few teens confront, yet one that will resonate deeply with readers. At its core, the story revolves around Jane, Beckett, and Damien, 3 characters whose distinct voices echo the same unacknowledged pain. Their intertwined journeys reveal the complexities of love, loyalty, and grief, all set against the backdrop of Regina's Bay, a place that serves as an everyman, emphasizing the significance of the people who inhabit it rather than the setting itself. I began writing this novel at 16, and whenever I revisit Before We Part, I feel like the me at 16, living abroad in a small town, and I hope to evoke the same feeling in others. After studying English literature in university, I stepped away from writing, as many do from the pressure of living up to the greats, but recently reignited that love by completing this project. I'm excited about the opportunity to receive your feedback, as it will be invaluable in refining my query for publication. Thank you for considering my query. I look forward to your insights.
This is another really short one, 233 words.
Whoa.
Again, if you can do it well in a short amount of time or amount of words, I commend you. I will say my overall comment on this one was it was like a little bit too vague. I didn't quite understand the stakes of the story, but I have a lot of specific notes that I think might actually help with that.
Nice.
So I will start right at the top. The very first sentence is a question. I don't mind a contemplative question at the beginning of a query, but some agents do not like that. So it's up to you if you want to leave it or not, but some people are turned off by that. My opinion is that if it sets up the tone of your story, I like it. So for me, I would leave it. I just wanted you to know some agents don't like that. The next thing I wanted to say is that the genre. So you've pitched it as a young adult romance that transforms into a gripping mystery. I will say genre blends are really big right now. A lot of publishers are looking for genre blends. That's great. However, if you are pitching this as a romance, it needs to follow the beats of a romance. I'm nervous with the way you've said this, that it doesn't. So what I would say is to and I don't know the book, so I will leave this with the author, but I would probably call it a mystery with romantic elements. But that's going to depend on how the actual story plays out. In this same paragraph, it says it weaves essential YA tropes and then names the tropes. My question, and maybe for you to have some thoughts on that, is, are these 3 tropes essential to YA?
I love this. Sorry, that makes me laugh because that was my first thought. The first thought that I had was that sentence was like, okay, these are tropes that very commonly do show up in YA, and I think there's something to be said there that like they get a lot of traction. A lot of people, pick those up. I would argue strongly against the use of the word essential in that sentence because your YA does not need to have a love triangle, and in fact many readers hate love triangles. So
it's me. I hate a love triangle. Yep. There's a love triangle, I'm out.
There it is.
Lame.
So I think it's fair to like say what the tropes are. I think that's really nice. Maybe Carleen has a different opinion, but I feel like calling out the tropes in your query could be a good way to set the tone. But just be careful of sweeping statements like what has to be in this genre and what doesn't, because it's very difficult to have an authoritative statement on that that's actually accurate.
Yeah, I will say as far as tropes, I think there are agents who love to know what tropes they're getting into, especially agents who focus on like romance. Mm-hmm. I will admit a personal flaw, which is that like I don't really understand tropes. Like I know what they are. I understand what tropes are. You know, love triangle, that's an obvious one, but a lot of the times when people give me like the title of a trope, I'm like, I don't really know what that means. Mm-hmm. Like I can't picture in my head how that looks in a book. Mm-hmm. So for me, I don't really care. If I see a trope, I'll just ignore it unless it's one that is very easily recognizable, like a love triangle. Yeah. But even then, like I don't need to know it. Yeah. I will say, and this is just speculation, YA might be more trope specific, and I don't work in YA, I work in adult. So take what I'm saying with a grain of salt. Take what I'm saying only as truth if you're querying me. Yes. So anyways, to continue, my next point in that same paragraph is, so it explores dark realities that few teens confront. So how dark are we talking? I think you need to be more specific here, so that an agent knows what they're getting into. This is almost parallel to our trigger warnings conversation. When you say dark realities that few teens confront, I'm picturing like really dark, especially in this day and age. Teens see a lot of really dark stuff. So if this is something so dark that few teens confront it, I'm nervous. And I mean, I'm not nervous, but like you might make people nervous.
The other point to that is I would recast that sentence regardless. I feel that it calls into question, like, okay, if it's dark realities that few teens confront, how is it relevant to teenage readers of YA?
True. Yeah.
And if you can explain that in the query, then that's fine. Like, but that, again, we need more specific. It's too vague.
And in the next part of the sentence, it says one that will resonate deeply with readers.
So why?
Which one is it?
How does that connect? We need to see that on the page, or I would remove that and say something else, essentially.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree, because it could mean a variety of things, like the memoir one we were just talking about. Like, that's actually like some seriously dark stuff, and one that would resonate deeply with readers.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's a huge problem, mostly in the States, but there's been some in Canada too. So it's like, yeah, that could be something that works. But if it's something else, like a little less intense, like getting in trouble with the or something, then I like, it's different. And not knowing what it is, I don't know. It's hard to get sold in the first paragraph.
Yeah, it leaves too much of a gap.
Yeah. And it also, I will say also, like, jumping ahead a little bit to the next paragraph, like none of what is in that paragraph is, to me, is like a dark reality.
Correct,
so I feel like I'm missing something based on those two things not connecting. So I would just say be more specific there, or adjust as you see fit. Moving into that next paragraph, we are introduced to 3 characters. We don't know, is this a multi-POV? Do we get a POV for each character? Please tell us. It does say 3 characters whose distinct voices, so that makes me think it probably is, but again, please tell us. This end of this sentence, whose distinct voices echo the same unacknowledged pain. What does this mean? I'm not sure what that's trying to get across to me. I understand they have intertwined journeys and they're obviously sharing some sort of trauma, but again, and this kind of falls back on the specificity thing, like without knowing what they're dealing with, I don't know what this means. And I want to know what this means. So please just add that in. Then kind of the end of this paragraph, we are introduced to what might be a 4th POV character in the setting. I'm not sure. So what I wrote here, just to get my train of thought, is I love a setting as a character, but I'm unclear what this actually means.
Sure.
It sounds to me like the character itself might, or the place might be a character. And I like it. I like it when people can do that well. I'm not sure if that's what they're trying to get across or not, though. So I think, again, just more specificity, being a little more clear in what that means. And then kind of just my biggest overall thing, which I touched on before, is this is just a little bit vague. My question for the author is to please just just tell us what actively sets up this story. What is the story we are following, and how is it set up? And what are the stakes? Because it's just vague as it is now, and it sounds interesting. Like, even reading it as it is so vague, I'm still interested. I'm like intrigued. I'm like, this sounds interesting. I just don't know what I'm supposed to be interested in yet.
Yeah, I think that nails it.
Yeah,
my notes are fairly similar in that regard. I have a couple of ideas, or maybe some suggestions that might be helpful as well. That, like, from a high level view, the query sets the stage decently well. We had some suggestions for the trope wording and some of that, but it does like set the stage. It tells us the genre. It gives kind of a vibe. But then in the description of the actual story is where we don't get much. We don't get any indication of the plot or what the specifics are that these characters are dealing with, and I think that's the most important part. So what do I have here? I have some questions. So it mentions romance, friendship, and grief, but romance and friendship between who and who? Grief over what? We don't get that. We don't get what motivates these characters, what their goals are. Like, they have some unacknowledged pain, like Carleen mentioned. Does that mean, like, they all went through something together and they're dealing with that together? Tell us that. Like, there's no need to withhold that information. Telling us what that is will only actually help with the query. Or they've each gone through something different, but it's resulted in a very similar process of their grief or their pain that they're going through together and working on together by happenstance or whatever. Tell us that. That would be really interesting to know. So I think to help kind of streamline that, I would recommend focusing on the second paragraph, rewriting it to focus on plot. And Carleen kind of basically already said this, just in different words. So it might be helpful, one, to have your synopsis drafted, which just explains beat for beat, this is what happens. Maria's smiling at me, so I think I stole her comment. Just to have the plot really clear in your mind, so that when you then go try and write this portion of the query, you can identify what's the inciting incident, what's the thing that happens in the first 10% of your story that kicks things off, that makes the story actually start to happen, that asks that big question that we want answered, or whatever it is. And then what do the main characters decide that they need or that they want to do in order to get the story moving based on that incident? Like, what do they decide to do from there? Or what are they pushed into doing from there? Or, like, what is it that just, like, gets the ball rolling down the hill? That's, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, that's what the query is for. And you don't really need to go beyond those main things.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, one of my main notes was to do your synopsis before you do your query. Because otherwise something happens like this where the writer's trying to just summarize their plot in like a paragraph or two. And sometimes you need notes, and you should be able to pull out all the main beats of your story into your synopsis and go, okay, what has to go into the query? And then that's where you build your query, your 1 or 2 paragraphs in the middle there. So yeah, I think, and since you need a synopsis to query anyway, you may as well just get it done, and then you have it, and then you can use it for this step too. 2 birds, 1 stone, or whatever. So the one thing I would also be cautious of is there's 3 main characters. So I kind of want to know, are there 3 POVs? Because if there are, that will change how you introduce your characters in the query. If there's only 1 or 2 POVs, like, I kind of want to know that, because then the danger is, if there's 3 POVs, of getting into each character, like using up valuable real estate to talk about each character for too much time. So you really only have like 1 or 2 paragraphs. So you want to try and keep it concise, but this is too concise. Do you know what I mean? Like, I still don't know what it's about. I know it's a young adult romance, and there's going to be tropes, and there's going to be a mystery, but like,
what's the mystery?
What's the mystery? What's the dark realities? Where are their distinct voices? So the other thing I have a problem with is using words like distinct voice and then not telling us anything about the characters. They're just names at this point. I don't know who they are, what they want, what are the stakes. I don't know anything. So this is one of those things where it kind of reads a bit more like a part of a back cover copy or like a review or something, and less about the plot. So yeah, that's the main thing I think we've all been talking about. And in the author bio paragraph, first of all, I like the title. And I like the phrasing of, when I revisit before we part, I feel like the me at 16, although I'm not sure about the wording of that. But anyways, I would take out that I began writing this novel at 16, because no matter how cool that may sound, anything you started writing at 16 that you're trying to publish now, I really hope you rewrote it. I
Yeah.
just hope that you did, because I know the stuff I wrote at 16 that I thought was so good was so, it needed to be updated. Do you know what I mean? It was so not ready to be seen. So I would just cut that out so that there's no internal judgment from anybody reading it. And yeah, and I think that the conclusion here could be fitted to the agent that's going to, like, this was coming to us, so it has, you know, the bit about opportunity to receive feedback and everything like that. So that's great. And then if this were for an agent, then you would want to rephrase that. But otherwise, I think it's like, I like that. Yeah. And, you know, the beginning, yeah, I agree with you guys about the tropes. I think for YA and for romance, and then throw them together, tropes are a big, big selling point. So I can see why the tropes are in there. I would cut the word essential, though, because everyone's idea of what's essential is totally different. So don't want that in there. And I think you got to touch on the dark realities. I got to know. And again, if this is the place for trigger warnings, you got to put those in there too. But yeah, I think that's pretty much my main thing, is we just need more plot.
Mm-hmm.
It was pretty much what I'm getting at. It's just, it's just a little too vague. I'm interested, but like, I want to know more about this. Like, I wouldn't want to pick this up and take a chance on it at the bookstore. Do you know what I mean? Because I just don't know enough about it.
Yeah. And to the author's benefit, we've pointed out, you know, a lot of things that they're missing, but this query is only 233 words.
Yeah. Which is awesome.
They
it's
have
super tight.
Tons of room to work.
Cow.
Yeah.
So like,
absolutely.
Let's add some more stuff in there.
I know. And if they refine like their first and last paragraphs, and then throw in, you could get another paragraph in the middle there with plot if you needed to. Yeah, and it would still be under the word count. So I think that's also very impressive. This is so concise. So yeah, you're right. You should definitely mention that, because it is hard to be concise, as a lot of writers know. Elise is smirking over there because she sends me her manuscript and she's like, it's 10,000 words more than I want. And I just go in there and I'm like, cut. I'm like, I'll help you get down there.
No, it's honestly the worst. I'm in school right now, and all my assignments have like word count limits and page count limits, and inevitably every single assignment I have handed in has been like, this is over the word count, this is over the page count. I trimmed it down as much as I possibly felt that I could, and I'm still over it. And I can't fix it. It's infuriating. Oh my god.
And then I have the opposite problem. I'm like, oh, I need more words. So I have
Me
to
too.
add. I know. That's why we edit for each other.
Yeah.
We're a match made in heaven there.
Dear Agent, I have had your website bookmarked ever since I read Amelie Howard's incredible The Worst Duke in London in a single sitting, and I was thrilled to see on Query Tracker that you had reopened to queries. I write romance for the same reason I loved The Worst Duke in London, to make readers cry, laugh, and bask in the tension between the characters. Since you are looking for more slow burn, forbidden romance, I would love to offer a forbidden formula for your consideration. 21-year-old Ada Parmer is brilliant, and she knows it. On the day of a job interview, she mentions a brilliant idea to a man in the elevator, not knowing he was the head of the neurology department. She doesn't land the job, but what happens when an intelligent scientist asks to meet up? Take the offer, even if it could be a blessing and a curse in disguise. When Ada is handed a job as a researcher, she takes it, although she wasn't sure how she would fit into a room full of the world's most brilliant scientists. To Ada's surprise, she hadn't realized that she had caught the attention of the big boss himself, Sean Pearson, for whom she would develop uncontrollable feelings. But Ada's newly perfect life comes crashing down when research projects were being stolen and sabotaged, and all evidence seemed to point to her. She's ultimately fired and has a hard time navigating who would believe her and be willing to help her unmask the true culprit. Why would anyone be on her side when the one person she thought would be on her side fires her? Sean realizes his mistake and decides to do whatever it takes to protect his company and Ada. However, Ada has a hard time forgiving Sean, complicated by allied research and someone within Sean's company being the person behind everything. The stakes are high for Ada's future career. If she can't clear her name, she risks being blacklisted in the medical research field. Sean, on the other hand, risks losing both his company and his growing connection with Ada. Ada Parmer must now choose between trusting Sean again and working alongside him to uncover the true culprit behind the sabotage, or walking away for good, leaving behind her research and career dreams. If Ada chooses to trust Sean again, they have the chance to expose the actual culprit and redeem her career while forging a stronger bond in the process. However, if she walks away, she could lose everything she's worked for. Ada's journey revolves around overcoming her self-doubt and learning to trust her instincts and Sean again, while Sean must reconcile his desire to protect Ada with the sacrifices he's made for his company. Their emotional reconciliation will determine the future of their partnership, both professionally and romantically. Forbidden Formula is complete at 52,000 words and is perfect for fans of STEM and forbidden romance. I learned to add all the feels to my romance after reading tons of books and research, as well as doing writing courses to better craft my words and improve my writing style. Now I'm a medical student who works with other medical students that keep me updated on all the internal medical drama. Thank you for your consideration.
Okay, this one was 560 words. I think this one was our longest query.
Yes.
I will say right off the bat, this is too long. It reads more of a synopsis than a pitch. And my biggest overarching suggestion for this author is to boil this down to like a maximum of 2 body paragraphs. We really just need like the main setup and the hook and maybe like the driving force of the story to intrigue us. We don't need all of the details. And I think Elise is going to give us a little bit more of an in-depth, but before she does, I have 2 things I wanted to just quickly bring up that were a little bit confusing to me as I read it. One is when we learn that she's handed a job as a researcher, I'm not sure if that's the same job she had interviewed for.
Yeah.
Is it a different job? Is it the same job? That's important for us to know. The other big question mark I had is at one point on the second page, we are introduced to a corporation, I think, called Allied Research, and we do not have any introduction into who this is, and it came out of nowhere. And if it is important to the query, which it might not turn out to be, I do think we need to just introduce that a little bit better. Yeah. My final point, and this is a little bit sidebar of a topic, is that 52,000 words is too short for this book. And I'm sorry to say that, but short books are definitely like sought after right now. But this is just too short for an adult novel. This would almost be considered a novella. So you could either pitch it as a novella, which is fine, or I would honestly recommend adding at least like 10,000 words at minimum to this. And my thinking is, and this is, I could be totally off base, but based on how long this query letter is, I think you could probably add to the book. I think you have all of the concepts there and the ideas there, and you probably just need to add a little bit more flair into it.
Sounds fair to me. The first thing I'll say before I get into the plot section where I want to focus is that I think this query was a pretty decent example of the author doing the research on the agent they are pitching to. They have a very specific example of a book that the agent is going to recognize. Whether that's a good one to bring up in this context or not, I don't know, because I haven't read it, and that's fine. But I just appreciated that personal touch. And then the other thing I wanted to say is the author's cook portion is also a really fitting way to show why they're qualified to write about STEM, because they're a medical student. They're within that realm of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. I think that's all of them. I think I did it.
I think so.
So those 2 things, the hook connecting with the agent and the cook connecting with why you're writing this, why you're qualified to write this. Very well done. That can be very hard to do. Hats off to you on that. The area where I think we agree this query needs the most work is the book portion, the plot. Carleen's already said it's too long. And yeah, reads more like a synopsis. So this, I want to be like as specific as possible so that this is as helpful to the author as possible, and I hope that we do that well. So I wanted to try and identify the main plot elements that I think we need to keep and consider everything else optional. Probably fluff can come out. So if I had to identify those, I would say the first thing and the most important thing is the boss employee relationship, because that's kind of the forbidden romance piece. That's the main genre that we're working with, the main trope. That needs to be highlighted. I would probably start the summary of the book in a different place, maybe even with the second paragraph. That's one of the things I've suggested with some of the things that I've recommended removing. Basically, keep the first sentence. 21-year-old Ada Parmer is brilliant and she knows it. Skip everything else and go straight into when she's handed a job as a researcher. She takes it even though she's not really sure if she's qualified. That's a really interesting dynamic, and I think that's where the story really starts. That's the inciting incident of everything that will come after, because that's where she meets the man that she falls in love with. That's where her career gets put in jeopardy, all these things. So that's your kicking off point. Everything else in between, about on the day of the job interview, man in the elevator, all that stuff, we can find that out in the pages. It's detail. I think it's unnecessary. The second piece that I think is the next most important is the stakes, which is when Ada's career starts to take a hit. I think that was good that we get some specifics about, like, research projects start to be stolen and sabotaged. Terrifying. That's really not great. And then she's being accused of it. Like, great conflict point. I think that works really well. If that comes a little bit further up in the query, based on what I've just said, I think that will tighten it up even more and make it just more obvious that that's the main point here, that, like, her career is at stake. And then the third piece, I think, is now the conflict between her and the boss, that he doesn't believe her at first and fires her. And then the rest of their story sounds like it's about whether they can reconcile or not, and whether she can get over the fact that he didn't believe her to begin with. And then realized he made a mistake, which, compelling conflict. There's compelling conflict in there, and I think that needs to be highlighted. I think what Carleen mentioned about the strange organization that we don't know anything about, that can come out. I don't think it needs to be in the query at all. Even if it is an important piece of the conflict, I think it's just more than the query allows space and time for. And so, yeah, when the author gets these notes back, they will... this little insider look for anyone who wants to submit pages. They will see me, like, crossing things out and saying, you don't need this, you could take this out here. And then I have some notes explaining why I've done this. And as always, if you disagree, feel free to leave it as it is or change it in a different way. You are the author of the story and you know it best. So there's my little disclaimer that I try to include everywhere. But yeah, I think this can be made a lot tighter. And if you focus on those three main plot pieces, it'll be a lot clearer what this story is about, what's important, and we'll leave it open enough for the agent to have those questions and be intrigued and not feel like, okay, I know the whole story and I'm good, thanks, because that's what you don't want. So yeah, I think that's it from my notes. I can stop talking now.
You got to save the synopsis for the synopsis. The query is not the place for your synopsis.
Yeah.
So so my overall notes, I of course agree with you guys. I think it's great that the writer did the research on who they're querying and included that. I love that. But I will say a lot of agents will see how long this is and they might just be like, nope.
Yeah.
Not tapping out, because you have to remember how many queries they get. Like, Carleen, how many queries, when you're open for queries, like how many query letters hit your desk?
We never close, first of all.
Okay.
I mean, technically, sometimes some of our agents can close, but as an agency, we never close, and we have a shared inbox. I counted ours last year, and we got 5,000 in the year. And for every one of those queries, we have a rule at our agency where every single agent has to pass on it before we pass on it. So all of us are reading every single query.
Oh my gosh, that's so much work. Okay. I love that method as an author who is going to query, but
shout out to my agency.
In this case, I want our writers to listen to that 5,000 queries in a year. So if you don't follow the industry standard, like, you are screwing yourself before eyes get on your page. Like, just follow the rules, and one of those rules is not a 2-page query letter. Stick within the word count, keep it concise, and like Elise said, keep the important plot beats, and the rest is for the agent to find out when they read the synopsis or the pages, right? You don't want to give away everything in the query either. So yeah, I think that that's my main thing is that writing is creative, but selling and publishing a book is a business. And this is a business letter. So you have to keep that in mind. I did have a few other notes. I agree with the plot points, like which ones stand out the most to me. I agree. And I wanted to make a note, again, watch for casual slang in query letters. In this one, like I learned to add all the feels. Like, I mean, I love to say all the feels to like an Instagram post about like cute dogs or something, but it doesn't have a place in a business letter, and it pulls me out of it as well. And it kind of makes me think that the writer, if they can't follow the query letter standard, then, well, are they going to be hard to work with? Are they not going to listen to edits? Are they not going to, and even the word count's too low for the genre and everything like that. So I think some research needs to be done on, and some preparation needs to be done on this project before the query goes out. And I did have a few word choice things in the last paragraph. So reading tons of books and research, that doesn't flow well. Too casual of a sentence for this kind of letter. And then there's this section where you can be more specific in your bio. So doing writing courses, well, where are they? What kind of courses are they? There's editing courses, there's writing courses, there's, writing workshops. There's all different kinds of writing programs. So it would be really good to have a little more information about that. And I think that's pretty much it. Like, I think if this gets shortened and edited, I think it will be good to go. And I think, one of the things that I will recommend to people is to write their first draft with like everything they think they need in a query or in a synopsis, and then you can go through and cut it. And that's pretty much what this writer can do now. That we've kind of been in there and be like, you should have this here, this here. They're going to be able to go through and really neaten it up. And the one thing too, I would, like we've talked about this whole episode, have your title, word count, etc. in the first paragraph. I really would like to see that, especially on this one. So yeah, that's that for me. I think you guys pretty much got it.
Thank you again to all of the authors who submitted for this round of query letter critiques. This has honestly been like super fun. I love doing this in a big batch, and seeing what everyone's writing about and seeing them put their best foot forward, all those good things. So thank you, Carleen, again.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, it's delightful. We'll have you on again if you're willing to spend this much time with us. And we really appreciate your insights. So we wanted to do a quick little wrap-up section here because we noticed some trends, I guess, that's the benefit of looking at so many query letters at once. We can notice some themes and things that people are commonly struggling with, and hopefully some of our insights will be helpful to the majority. And Carleen, why don't you kick us off with some of those thoughts and tell us what you think?
Okay, my thoughts. Very baseline. Your query needs to tell us what the concept is of your book, and gold star if you also get your tone and voice of your book in there. Metadata is preferred at the top. That is not a rule, and I have heard other agents say the opposite, but all three of us all seemed to agree by the end of all of these queries, it makes more sense at the top, and I will continue to stand on my soapbox about that. Finally, it is nice if you personalize your query to the agent, if you say something about them or about your connection to them, but it is absolutely not necessary. Do not stress yourself out about it. If you don't know what to put in your bio, tell me how many cats you have, tell me how many houseplants you have. I don't care. Just tell me something about you.
Nice. I think that is my biggest takeaway from these conversations with you, because that's something that I definitely have stressed about. And I know most people writing query letters are stressing about that piece. I always feel like every single query I send has to be, perfectly personalized, tailored to that person so that they'll actually read it. They're going to read it. It's fine.
They're going to read it.
And if they're not going to read it, it's fine too. Like, it's not as big a deal as I think it is. So I really appreciate that. And then, yeah, the thing that I noticed was that, and this feels a little bit obvious even as I say it. Obvious to me, might not be obvious to other people. Most queries tend to struggle in the middle section when they're talking about the book plot. Most of the ones that we got, I felt that the hook and cook sections were, pretty solid. Maybe some touch-ups were needed, some wording suggestions, that kind of thing. But overall, those sections captured what they needed to. We had the metadata, we had the information about who they are, we had some personalization towards certain agents. Like, that was all good. So the biggest place to focus is on that plot piece, and I feel like the rest will fall into place a little bit easier. And one of our biggest tips was to write your synopsis first, which I think... Did I just steal that from Maria? Yeah, I did. And
sure did.
you can have your soapbox now. I will trade.
Okay, well, yeah, definitely write your synopsis first, because you're going to need a synopsis if you're querying, and it's a seriously helpful tool, even though everybody hates writing it. Mm-hmm. And it's universal. Mm-hmm. But you do have to write it. Even if you write it, that's fine. And then you'll be able to refer to your synopsis when you're writing your query to see if you're getting the right plot beats in. Yeah. And that's important. So definitely do that. Don't discount your author bio section. Lean into it a little bit. Like, it doesn't have to be anything crazy. You can think you're the most boring person in the world, but my method was like, pretend I'm writing it for Elise or something like that, writing it for a friend instead of writing it for myself. And it feels less weird to talk about myself in third person, I guess, when I'm writing it. So do that, and, get a friend or two to go over it and be like, does this sound like me? And then roll with it. It doesn't have to be super scary and intense. Yeah. And the last thing, which I harped on repeatedly through this episode and the last, is your query is a business letter. Business letter. So bear that in mind. It needs to look and sound professional. It should be formatted correctly. No typos. You should be hitting all the major things. So at the beginning, you should be hitting your title, word count, genre, all that kind of stuff, comps, then your plot, then your section about you. And if you're personalizing it, that's great too. Just make sure that it's not over long. Like, some of them, like the personalization was like a few sentences. I don't think that that's necessary, because you do have to remember it's valuable real estate. You only have a page, essentially. And so you want to make sure that you're only putting what needs to be on there. Look at me. My sentence structure is fabulous. Gorgeous. At the end of this episode.
Gorgeous.
Yep. And that's my thoughts on the queries. I was really happy to read all of these. It was fun to see such a variety, such a variety of stories and types of writers and styles and everything like that. So it's fun. I feel like I learned a lot. And I want to go write my query letter now and then rip it to shreds. That's the tea on query letters. We hope you enjoyed this critique segment. Remember to rate and review wherever you get your podcasts. And if you want more of the Tea Grindies, you can join our Patreon or follow us on our socials at the Tea Grindies Podcast. Happy writing.